Hello, and welcome to this week's video blog from the Center for Human Awakening. My name is Rob Meager. I'm co-founder of the Center. And this week we'll continue our series of video blogs on life's stages of transition from Richard Harvey's book, Your Essential Self. In this video blog, we'll speak about the 42-year threshold, true adulthood. True adulthood is available to us around the age of 42, although most of us are entirely unprepared for it. In a world where the invisible qualities of the psyche and spirit are undervalued, few of us recognize, let alone prepare for, this crucial threshold. The childhood patterns that have survived in us unconsciously and have not been resolved are ripe for working on at this stage. But there are many distractions for us in the outer world. Our emotional conflicts become more problematic in our 40s, but we possess the inner resources to resolve them. We feel a strong compulsion to clear the unfinished business of our earlier lives in order to meet the exacting challenges of the 40s with a minimum of psychological and emotional baggage. We feel an immense lack in ourselves at this time if we have not found a real sense of self, and out of that, a true sense of our meaning and purpose. We sense the passing of time acutely and fear missing the opportunities for growth that are available now, because this could mean missing them entirely as we move on toward the challenges of our middle years. The biggest mistake we make at this threshold is to seek the solution to difficult challenges in the past. The past must be shed, not reenacted. Beginning new enterprises without a deep understanding of what is required of us simply creates further obstacles. The inner call is to move forward, but our dilemma is that we cannot move on without resolving our historical patterns. This must be put behind us because the future requires our mature involvement, not our childish repetition. This stage of life is misunderstood and mismanaged so often that it is popularly known as the midlife crisis. The usually ill-advised attempt at deferring the challenge of adult maturation by regressing to a more youthful life orientation. Instead of deepening in his relationship, a man abandons his partner and family to embark on an affair with a younger woman in an attempt to repeat adolescent pleasures. Instead of withdrawing her projections onto the male world and a hard-won career, a woman perpetuates her dependence on men and patriarchal structures by staying in a soulless job and ignoring her inner urge to change. She sacrifices the development of her maturity and the ability to be self-referring, which is asked of her at this stage of life. At least part of the reason for the midlife crisis is that there are gaps in development through earlier stages of life. Some challenges are deferred and some experiences are not entered into fully, which cause us to be called back to fulfill the demands of these stages before we can truly go on. Inner work can bring us insight and clarity into a childhood of unfulfilled needs, teenage years that suffered from a lack of guidance and support, or how we avoided our 20s out of anxiety and the fear of failure. When some essential stages of life have not been lived adequately, we may have to reappraise our life. If our attachment is too strong, we must move toward the object of our desire. For example, the middle-aged woman who didn't experience life in her 20s because she left her childhood home when she was young and immediately married needs to ask herself what the unlived 20-year-old part of her needs to do to be fulfilled. Or the 40-year-old woman who missed out on her adolescence because, as the oldest child of the family, she had to look after the younger children, needs to ask the same question of her adolescent self. Or the over-intellectual male who has climbed the professional ladder only to find he is middle-aged and in a deep despair over his unhappiness and lack of an emotional life, needs to ask himself what he needs to do to develop emotionally, physically, or spiritually. Each of these circumstances offers a choice. Either we can shed our feelings, unfulfilled desires, and needs and release them, or if we can do that, we have to find a way to fill in the gaps in our development with new experience and seek fulfillment for our needs and desires. Great courage, surrender, and openness are required to meet this crucial threshold. The impetus towards change is overwhelming if we can only harness it. Conversely, the strength of our resistance can be overwhelming. We may seek to avoid the challenges by capitalizing on our new confidence in our abilities. At this time of life, we may have become accomplished in our chosen field, senior to others and wiser in the eyes of our juniors. We may have crossed many outer thresholds in our career, in acquiring material possessions and making money, in our marriage or partnership, and in raising children, all of which may have appeared daunting to us when we were younger. But if we look for further increase in our capabilities and acquisitions, if we seek individual fulfillment in our accomplishments and actions, we fail ourselves now. Ambition and achievement, psychological self-esteem, and material security may be necessary to build our outward life on strong foundations. But the challenge now is inner maturation. It is comparable to our biological birth, but this is the birth of our psyche, our psychological birth following a gestation of 42 years in the world. We need to take full responsibility for our lives and rid ourselves of the old resentments that feed on themselves inside us. In particular, we must re-envision all that we consider negative in our lives and see how we have grown through our suffering. For many of us, this is a hard challenge, but through this process of inner cleansing, we reaffirm or discover our life's direction and purpose and create a strong and lasting inner foundation for our life. Many people begin the inner journey in their late 30s or early 40s, sensing this opportunity for impending change, but without necessarily knowing why. The inner impulse to meet the threshold of true adulthood can be stronger than any aspect of their outer lives. Outward conditions are far less important than the need to become adult and fulfill the psychological demands of their biological clock. When we are aware of and responsive to these inner processes, the 40s can be a liberating time. We are no longer caught by the obsessions of our early conditioning, no longer dominated by ambition or our rejection of it, or compelled to walk the knife edge of success and failure as we did in our 30s. Even more distant are the insecurities, aspirations, and pretenses of our 20s. If we successfully cross the threshold of our early 40s, we become a true adult, a psychologically developed individual with a solid sense of self. Through the 40s, we strengthen the self, seasoning the inner personality as we draw closer to the spiritual threshold. of the 50s.